We're live for now. Modern Relics Podcast. I'm Angel East Lucky. We're back again. We're with you. Get down here. Podcast time.
It is podcast time.
What's happening, man?
We would love all of you to join us. Everything's good here. Our weather seems to be rather mild. Yours seems to be the opposite. So
It's always
we
something.
should probably warn people. Yeah.
Like the temperature is low, lower. It's like in the mid to high 70s, which is fantastic. But we're in a stage 3 wind advisory, which for April, like March and April, is pretty usual down here. But it also means I may lose connectivity because I already lost the internet earlier today, and the power flickered once. So if we just drop offline, since I operate the command center for the entire broadcast on my end, well, the podcast dies. So enjoy it while you can. Otherwise, things are good. Things are chugging along. So not a whole lot. Anything new with your week? Anything exciting?
Yeah. Week was good. Had a solid week. Just did kind of the average work week, but my wife has been somewhat preoccupied and distracted, which is normally we're winding that down. Normally her whole focus this time of year, I lose my wife for 3 months because she's focused and listening to the state level race, or the state level when our state is in session for our legislators. She's typically keeping close attention to that on a daily basis and reporting on that. And not that she hasn't this year, she's done a lot of it, but normally we're winding down. It's March. The session's supposed to be ending pretty soon. So I typically, she starts to emerge and I get to talk to her again instead of her being in headphones on a laptop for the vast majority of her time frame. But we, like a submarine, are going back down under because my wife has announced her candidacy. She is running for precinct committeeman for our particular precinct.
Nice.
Now, for those that don't know, because oftentimes we have a very basic or fundamental, like a very rudimentary understanding of our government operations. And I won't lie, I was the same way up until probably, 5 years ago when I started really understanding how all the mechanisms worked, in the right way and everything. And so most of us live on a national level where most of the time we don't even know who our city council members are or who are. And now I know every inch of the playing field and every corner of what makes up our government from the ground up. Yeah. And so a precinct committeeman is the Democratic Party and the Republican Party both have these committees, and they, in every county in the United States, there are county committees for each party. Now, every county is cut up into different precincts. Kootenai County, the county I live in, has 74. Yours could have 300, depending on how big your county is. It's all due, and each precinct is built off of population. So certain precincts could be absolutely huge, but they're sparsely populated. So it's a different animal where you could have, like, the center of town is square mileage, very, very small, but it has a dense population. So therefore that is a precinct. So it gets cut up by population. Now, ours has 74. They meet once a month, and they basically are the closest level you have at a grassroots level of representation to your party and your government. Yeah. So now they can craft policy that they bring down at the state level once a year. They can actually be the ones to find and pitch candidates. They could be the ones to support or back policy or candidates on a state level. And so each of the committees kind of pitches their ideas, and then they kind of bring them down to the yearly state committee, and all of that gets all kind of culminated into policy made for the Republican Party for the state, and then also then can be crafted into policy even on a national level. So it's basically localized idea farming, and
kind of the mouthpiece of your particular community around you,
your neighborhood. In fact, your PC is most likely your neighbor, you know, just a couple houses down, for as far as you know. So she has been on the outskirts, on the outside of this for a very long time, basically because she always sees herself in a administrative role. She helps so well because she's so analytical. She's a walking spreadsheet. She's a human Alexa. She is somebody who actually has all of the information and disseminates it well and helps in the background a lot. And that's something that she's very comfortable in. Being in front of people is not something she's super comfortable with, so this is kind of sticking her neck out, but she did it out of desperation. She did it out of the fact that our particular Republican Central Committee started off when we started kind of getting involved and activated in this community, was a very strong Central Committee, and it was we were right in the middle of kind of all the COVID stuff, so everyone was kind of on the same page about a lot of things. And I had kind of warned her. I was like, yeah, we're all on the same page right now because we're fighting like these basic tenets of people kind of trying to stomp down on fundamental constitutional freedoms. Now, the minute the dust settles on this, we're going to start realizing that we are not aligned with a lot of these people. It was a big tent. And now once we're under the tent and all the dust is settled, we're going to find out that on a principle level, we are not aligned with a lot of these people, and a lot of these people may not even be good characters. And it became abundantly clear that I was correct in that assumption. And so as we started going on, we decided, we started seeing things. We started seeing cracks in the armor. We started seeing them doing things that we considered what Democrats would do. We're like, hey, that's kind of shady. You shouldn't do that. And so we started kind of putting forth, our voices on that, and it angered them because we're all supposed to, hive mind, get along to get, go along to get along. That's the enemy over there. We're like, yeah, we know that's the enemy over there. The progressive left is obviously the enemy. We don't have to paint that picture anymore. They're doing it just fine for us. We can point it out when something extremely egregious happens that we have to go after, but we can just expect them to behave the way that we know that they're going to behave. We don't have to clutch our pearls every time they say something that's obvious to their ideology. What we do need to do is set standards and hold them within our own groups. That we need to clean our own houses and make sure that we are not being them. Right. That we need to make sure that that we have a set of principles that is guided by, and for me and my wife, it's guided by our faith. But even if you can't do that, then how about just the preamble for the state of Idaho's Republican Party, which is a beautiful preamble, and it's very clear. And when these people are fundamentally going against it in order to hold strings of power. Yeah. And they have different ideologies that they are trying to keep quiet about and be secretive about when they are actually trying to flip the tables of the Republican Party in a subversive manner. And they've all taken over the leadership roles within this Central Committee. They've got a track record of doing a lot of good in the community, but it's only because they blow their own horns about a lot of stuff that if you really dug deep, you really realize that all of the state races that they won, as they take claim to, are kind of gimme races. Like they were going to win regardless of whether or not the Central Committee backed them or not, because we live in a hyper red area.
Mhm.
So for them to do victory laps on certain races was kind of disingenuous. And they have a rating and vetting committee, which is really just a rating committee. There's no vetting involved, which has been proven over and over again every single election.
Mhm.
When they put somebody up for a city council race or for a mayoral race or for a school board race, and they prop them up
Without
but then
actually
just
trying to
back
find out
away.
where the bodies are buried. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden now, because we promoted them as conservatives, as people within our community, who, people trust Aaron and I. They trust a bunch of
Mhm.
us, right?
Becomes a
Who
blight
do I
on the
vote for?
whole. Yeah.
Exactly. Then all of a sudden we look like fools because we promoted this person that the KCRCC said that they rated and vetted. Turns out
The KCRCC, if you're
know
wondering or listening, is the local Kootenai County Republican PAC, right?
Republican Central Committee. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and so now, we're at odds with these people because every time we kind of go, hey, you should be doing more PR work. You should be doing more work within the
Mhm.
community to kind of better your reputation, which has been tanking over the last couple of election cycles due to the fact that they can't seem to win any of the local Coeur d'Alene races, and now it's spreading into Hayden. They're losing Hayden to all the rhinos, because you can't get elected in the state of Idaho with a D next to your name.
Yeah.
So all the Democrats, some of them are tried and true progressive Democrats that couldn't sully their names with an R, but a lot of them are savvy enough to recognize that they can hide in the shadows with an R in their name and just vote D across the line. And they've been doing it for 25 years in this state because of that. And so we have to be extra vigilant to be able to recognize the voting patterns and the behavioral patterns of these people who claim to be conservatives but truly aren't. Now, we do have another PAC called NIR, that the North Idaho Republicans, who were in an organization put together in protest to the KCRCC bringing on these Groyper types and ignoring it and ignoring all the kind of overt anti-Semitism that they were inviting in. And so they were just like, yeah, even on a local level, your average voter, even your average church-going voter, just wants to love God, go to work, raise their family, have their guns, have their, First Amendment, have their, kind of constitutional rights and a good economy and stuff like that. But they don't have the time, because they're raising those families and going to work, to get into the minutia of what's going on within the local political scene. And so, but the minute that one of those people hears, oh, but that Republican group is full of Nazis, they're like, whoa, that's not me. I don't want that.
Yeah,
And
you'll
so
have
they're
CNN
losing,
with cameras at City
right.
Hall that
Well,
afternoon.
they're just,
Yeah.
we've been raised our whole lives to kind of, that the only brotherhood that we should have is in Jesus. And to put anything else into that place seems very antithetical to biblical teaching. And so it is a punch to the face where they're like, I don't want to have anything to do with that. So your average voter is that person. So when they start hearing rumors that this is going on in their central committee, which they supported, and now they're like, oh, I don't want to have anything to do with that. And then they've got this alternative, which is North Idaho Republicans, which are reasonable Republicans, and they're not. They're just a bunch of Democrats. But it causes confusion amongst the masses, and we are no fans of NIR. Those guys are obviously, and what happened was they took over because of these reputations. So NIR put up a whole big battle to take over our central committee like 2 years ago. And they put a bunch of money into it, but all they had to do is knock on doors and go, we're at least not Nazis. And everyone's like, okay, cool, I'm voting for you. And they ended up winning 33 seats, which is a huge chunk. and they have some weight. Now, not all of them are Democrats. We have come to find out over 2 years that some of them are actually pretty conservative, like us. They just don't like all the Nazi
The
stuff, right?
association.
So they're
Yeah.
right, and so they've distanced themselves from NIR, but they're also distanced from the core of that group of the KCRCC that is holding on to this kind of power play for leadership with these weird, nefarious characters. And so they've created kind of this weird pocket and island in the middle. And in the meantime, because Aaron and myself and Stephanie Fetzer and a couple of others have kind of taken them to the ropes on some of their policies and on some of the things that they've been doing, they don't like us. In fact, they think that we're enemies, and which is why I wear the Fed hat, or why I wear the hat that says Lucky Barnard is a psyop.
Yeah.
That is in reference to what they've started calling
the
us
rhetoric that they're producing about you. So a couple things. We had talked for a hot minute last night ahead of the show, and you'd mentioned these rhino types that are Democrats that are secretly throwing R's on their name and, you know, entering races to win in that area. And they refer to themselves as moderate Republicans, which is funny because that's how I would have referenced myself, as more of a genuine moderate conservative. You know what I mean? But since that has kind of been, that nomenclature's been abducted, I've had to rethink through the evening, like, well, how would I describe myself? I guess just conservative, more or less. But how many precincts do you have up there?
74.
And they get redistricted based on population saturation every couple of years?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had over 1,000 after the 2020 rebalance. So a little bit of a difference in precincts as far as where I live versus where you live, which is pretty wild. That's what I was Googling a minute ago. But the big question is, when does the wife know if she's the new committeeman for district or precinct, whatever? And I don't think we should air that because I don't want people knocking down your door. But
no, it's fine. Actually, the election's this May, so it's during the primary. So
okay,
and that's been a point of contention. But the primary election is when they're on the ballots. So, and your PCs, whoever's running, if it's just one person or if it's 4 people running, and you only get obviously the Republican ones in your precinct, in your neighborhood, they'll be on your ballot. You won't get anybody else's. Now, she's got one contender, and it's an NIR contender. And she will probably, most likely, I mean, it would be shocking if this guy beat her with her reputation in this area. It would be shocking if he won. She's still going to put the work in, though. She's still putting out signs, and she's going to be door knocking every single Republican's door in our central committee, in our precinct.
Nice.
And so she's gathering an army to do that. She's got door hangers and flyers that she's made. She's really good with graphic design for political stuff. She's incredible with it. So she doesn't have to hire anybody to do that, which is good. So, but it is something that I'm very proud of her for doing, for stepping up. I don't have the time nor the temperance. I would be a table flipper. And she knows that. And I'd be one to sit at that table and tell everyone that they're idiots. And she has a little bit more decorum than I do in that regard. She's still a pistol, but she's not one that just will flip a table and go, all right, monkeys, you know, this is ridiculous. So I'm really proud of her. It's something that a lot of people, she's getting a lot of support for, and I'm very happy. And I think not only just to take a seat, because that's kind of what she's doing. She's filling a seat so that it doesn't get taken by NIR or another groiper, which is what all the leadership of the KCRCC are running, is just groipers. And so it's like they hand pick them intentionally for a different purpose as to what to turn the KCRCC into. So that being said, I think that there's more to it for her than just holding a seat. I think that they would be unwise as a committee not to use her profound skill sets, whether it be organizational, whether it be her ability to do social media, to do marketing, to be in any part of the PR function that they are so severely lacking, that she should be on a number of subcommittees just for her skill sets alone. She should be utilized far more than just holding a seat for a vote. But we shall see. Obviously, she needs to win the seat first. But that's coming up in the primary in May. Now, what I was saying before is that there's the current chairman, who is a huge problem. He likes to walk the fence of whether or not they're a public entity as any elected official, or a private party which does not have to answer to its constituents when complaints get made or suggestions get made. We don't have to listen to you. We are a private party. Well, if that was the case, then you're just an Elks Lodge, like a Republican Elks Lodge. Why do you even have an election? Why don't you just elect within the committee your friends and say, we're going to have a 74-person
where
vote,
elections become appointments?
Right, exactly. And so why not just do that? Oh, why do you also get to use public buildings for free and have to allow the public to be in there while you're having them, unless you're in a closed session for part of the meeting, which is completely falls within the statutes of the elected officials of Idaho. Also, why are we spending taxpayer money on ballots for PC committee people? Why is anybody voting for them if they're not a public entity? You can't have both. You can't be in both camps. You can't be a private party that does not answer to the subjects and to the constituents of the area if you're taking all of those other things. So, and then, but he likes to play both sides depending on what side of the argument works best for him at that point in time. And so that's one of the things that really spurred Aaron on to get in there and try to fix.
Well, I mean, hats off to her, because it's not an easy ask. It is nice that someone's kind of putting up the money where their mouth is, so to speak, and being like, well, then let's go. At least I'm going to try and run, which I always support, even if you get clobbered. But yeah, I distinctly remember 4 or 5 years ago, it must have been last time I was up in your neck of the woods, mentioning, then you should create your own PAC, which it sounds like the NIR did just a couple of years later.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can see it coming.
The problem is that they're technically the official PAC of the Republican PAC of the state, with state sanctioning, which then also lends me to believe that it's not a private party thing, that it's an actual elected official position. And that because they say, oh, well, we're not on the November, we're only in the primary ballot. We're not on the November ballot. And we're like, yeah, but you still take a seat. So you don't have to wait till November because there's no other people contending for that spot. That's what a primary is for, is to build up, a contention against the other party.
You have to introduce an opposition.
Right. Yeah. But if we're not introducing a Democratic opposition to that seat, then we don't need anything past the primary. And at that point, then you take a seat that you got elected for on a taxpayer funded ballot. You are an elected official. I don't care what month you got elected in. You're an elected official, period. And so they like to argue with us about that. And then when we prove them wrong, they leave our chats and ghost, because they know that they're pinned down. Then they know that they would have to answer that. But Erin, I think, is a fighter. She has been a fighter for my entire marriage, but especially in the last 6-7 years, it's really come to the surface of a warrior. It's almost to the point where I got to pull her back sometimes and go, oh, hold on. You're gonna get me in a road rage situation here. But she She's smart. She's brilliant. She knows more than anybody about the interworkings of local government,
Mhm.
and I think they're terrified because now they don't want her on that committee. The leadership doesn't. But it's either her or an NIR person. So either way, they lose that vote. So when they put out their recommendeds illegally, by the way, they're not supposed to put out they're not supposed to be able to recommend.
Yeah, they're not a private board of directors. They're elected officials.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they're not allowed to promote people from within their own organization, but they do it in a sideways manner. And they left our precinct completely empty. They said don't vote for anybody there. So, so she does not have the backing of either NIR nor the KCRCC. And
Do you
it's
legally have
rather
to
hilarious.
accept a counted write-in per precinct if there is no?
Oh, no, it's not a write-in. It's just that they're not recommending it. She's officially running.
Oh, but she
It's
will.
not a
Her name
write-in.
will
She'll
be on the official
ballot.
ballot. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Wow. I support
But-
the wife 2026.
yeah, it's fantastic. Me too.
I've referred to your wife
you can-
as the wife since you got married, so it's
Yeah,
not
pretty
a
much.
pejorative. It's the wife. She's in my phone
No.
as the wife. So
Yeah.
she's the wife. The wife's gonna get
Yeah.
it done in 2026.
And if anybody's listening and you want to help her out in any way, shape, or form, go to her website, Kootenai County Spectator.
Yeah.
.com, and she has links for you to donate to her campaign. It helps it so that I don't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Signs and door hangers and because she's going to have kind of a luncheon kind of function to invite people so she can talk to them within our neighborhood, be able to do something like that and kind of schmooze and talk to people and kind of let them know what she's all about and let them ask questions of her. There's going to be a lot of those type of things that she's got to be able to do, some online marketing, stuff like that. And I don't make a lot of money, and I can kind of supplement her here and there, but for the most part, if anybody's got some money to
I hope
throw at her, she would appreciate it.
I hope she fundraises enough to rent a hall somewhere, and that it's not Hot Dogs Outdoors where you have to fight with like a bunch of yellow jacket bees and stuff like that, and everyone gets stung, and it's like
too cold for yellow jackets.
Yeah, they all just leave unhappy. Like, I shouldn't have come here. It's got to be an uplifting experience. So hopefully she raises enough to get an indoor air conditioned spot away from the bees and the like.
So, but yeah, so that's what's been kind of consuming us lately.
Nice.
She was up until like 2 a.m. last night, like putting together a lot of her materials and fine tuning messaging. It's been really great to see the outpouring of support.
Yeah.
From people with us knowing as to how many people are kind of angry that she's doing this, because it's going to put the kibosh on a lot of their plans.
Does she have somebody helping her with like public appearance shopping? So, because she can't lean too, like, sensible pantsuit is okay, but like if you get into Hillary Clinton territory, it's going to raise all kinds of questions, and we don't need like the full pads and stuff. Like, does she got people for that?
Fortunately, she's already kind of thought this through.
Good.
She has a wardrobe that she uses when she goes down to the Capitol.
Okay, great.
So yeah, and it's not Hillary Clinton, but it's definitely not blue jeans.
Okay.
So it's kind of right in the middle, and she wears it well, but nothing. I mean, she's got 2 sleeves.
Yeah.
Like it's hard for her to, kind of keep. In fact, oddly, one of our legislators, Elaine Price, swear to God, Elaine Price looks like your average round glass, librarian lady. And she always wears cardigans. And one day I was at one of the meetings and she pulled up her cardigan just a little bit on her wrists, and there was tattoos on both sides. She's double sleeved too.
Nice.
And you would never have guessed. So it's hilarious, but Um, but yeah, that is what's been going on in our world,
It's a lot.
and we would love the support. If anybody out there feels like throwing in on that, she'd be happy to send you a thank you letter. So
Nice. Nice.
yeah,
Well, best of luck. And I'm very, very excited that she's actually doing this. Like,
yeah,
truly, really excited that she's gonna throw her hat in the ring and give it the most she can. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Awesome.
and she will. I mean, if anything, my wife does is get hyper fixated on something and go 120%, and it is the status quo for her. Like anything that she gets involved in, it is like a steam train. There's nothing to stop her, and she will be a force that they don't know what to deal with. Like they won't know how to deal with it. So and I would love to focus that energy in that direction with the reach that will have.
Yeah.
And so it'll be great to watch. I'm going to be popping popcorn every meeting because now she'll be under the gun. She'll be under fire. And so I'm probably going to have to go down once she wins. I'm going to have to go down there with her because if I'm in the room, all of those idiots are terrified. They do not like the last time we got off last week, and I went directly down there. My daughter's boyfriend gave me a ride down there and dropped me off. And the minute I walked in the room, they were taking roll call. And I don't think I'm scary. I think I'm kind of a teddy bear. But I do have an intensity about me when I need to, and but for them, I mean, we're talking about a room that the average median age is probably 63.
Yeah.
You know, and there's some younger people, but people who tend to be in the political spheres tend to be a little softer. So this to them is terrifying. I mean, they think that I'm a criminal, that a reformed criminal. They think they've got all these rumors about me, right? And they've tangled with me in chat rooms, so they know I'm also not dumb. And so I am something that really kind of strikes fear in a lot of them. To the point that I walked in the room and they were taking roll call and the whole room like did a complete like, and they all like all the chattering and stuff all kind of went to nothing. And then the lady taking roll call who hates us started stammering and couldn't keep. And so I was just like, wow, okay. And I just stood in the back of the room with my arms crossed behind my wife, knowing full well that they were going to be furious that they found out that she was running and they were going to confront her. I stood back there and no one would even approach her because they knew it was just a bad idea. So I don't have to be a tough guy. I just have to be in the room. And all that does is just keeps her at least protected in a way that they don't want to approach her because they'll also have to deal with me. And which will give her the comfortability in the room to do work without fear. And that's what I want for her. I want her to be able to do the good that I know she's capable of without worry of being verbally assaulted by the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
And so so that's where we're at. And I'm excited to be there. I'm excited to have this next chapter and see what happens from here. But yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So with that being said, did you want to get into some topics? You brought up some topics
I did
tonight that I was very excited about because I like to hear oftentimes your perspective on things that I don't know a lot about.
Yeah.
You know, I have my corners that I'm very, but you have different corners, and I like to hear about your corners. So
Yeah.
where did you want to start here?
I suppose I'll start with just a minor rant around social media. A sequence of events happened this week where I was growing increasingly annoyed that I was watching something on Amazon Prime, but I don't pay enough money to not get commercials, so they like slid those in there a year or two ago. I was like, this sucks because I'm already paying for Prime, and this was supposed to be one of the added benefits of a Prime membership or whatever. But I'm like, the annoyance level's growing. So I finish doing what I'm doing there, and I start to get productive. So I had done some work on the car, and I have a small, very small social media presence between YouTube and Instagram, and it's by design. I used to have a much larger one and kind of rebranded and took everything down because, you know, I wanted YouTube to be more like a journal entry throughout the time that I use that. And YouTube's been coming down on creators in a lot of ways over the last few years, specifically around monetization, which I've never really cared too hard about. But I'm one of the people that even if I were to monetize my channel, which now you have to have a certain amount of watch time and a certain amount of subscribers and a certain amount of metrics to hit to get to that point. I still couldn't because I use a lot of drone footage in my videos. And because I don't carry what's known as a Part 107 license, which is a commercial drone pilot or on UAV license, if I made money off of that channel, that would be using footage not in a recreational way, but in a way that is monetized, that the FAA could come find me a shit ton of money just for putting a pretty aerial photograph or slow-mo reel of the ocean, right? So that's kind of annoying. And then they take your algorithmic prioritization down based on dwell time. And so that's been like diminishing. So anyway, often the people that follow the stuff that I do with automobiles on my social medias go to Instagram for that. And occasionally I will put out an Instagram live reel. So I was like, you know what? I have a few minutes. I should probably update everybody. All the dudes that watch this build and then that one girl. If you look at who watches your channel by gender, there's like one girl I think that watches the content I put out and like a million dudes. So I tried to go live and Instagram was like, oh, sorry, we just changed things where unless you have at least 1,000 followers and then a bunch of other metrics, you don't get to go live anymore, which was also another free feature that was left out. And I'm like, the flame of excitement to share the passion for the things that I do in the very limited amount of free time that I have to do that is slowly getting extinguished where I'm like, you know, I don't think anyone would miss my online presence if I was gone. So I was like, I don't know why I'm doing any of this, to be honest with you. There are so many challenges to even getting seen now. I don't care about the monetization part, but just getting seen is like ridiculous. And it's like, why do I need to do that? Because I don't really care about internet validation for any of those things. I never really did, truly. But then I just started seeing what is my algorithm comprised of? And it is, as I said it was at the top of the year on this podcast, about 80 to 85% bots. That's the stories I'm getting fed. It's just it. Every newsreel, every what's new in the neighborhood, it's clipped, reprinted, bot farmed out, and then usually the description underneath it is something that has nothing to do with the content of the video, or it has Arabic writing under the bottom of it or Russian writing under the bottom of it. And it's like, none of this is even real. And I'm finding less and less incentive. Like I recognize now, like don't become your parents. Like I kind of am with this newfangled technology horseshit and get off my lawn a little bit. But truly, I find very little value in social media today. And it's getting worse. And I'm like, I don't care. Now, will I have an online presence through this podcast or our channels or other endeavors I do with friends of, you know, automotive nature or a motorcycle related nature? Probably, yeah. But like to maintain an online presence, I could give a care less approach to all of it. And I'm seriously considering the delete button because it's more noise than it is valuable information. And when I literally have to fact check every fucking reel that I get sent by every single person, it's kind of not worth, the juice really isn't worth the squeeze nowadays, you know? And it's,
Yeah.
we have allowed these platforms to be absorbed and taken over by, you know, mass sentiment and bot farms and all this other stuff that I just don't know where the value statement in being a consumer of all this stuff is when I want to be a contributor. There are so many more obstacles to overcome than there are to be a consumer. And I think that's what they want. So my rant a little bit is maybe just me being the old man in the room, so to speak, but I'm kind of tired of it. Like I'm sick of jumping through hoops to update the few. And there have been some comments and people that reach out. They're like, hey, where are you at with this? Or what did you do with that? Or how did that turn out? Or whatever. And principally it's on YouTube, but there's a ton of crossover. And now I can't even do that anymore. Just on a random Saturday, it's like, oh, you're ineligible because you're not popular enough. So go seek some more internet validation. And when you become one of the popular enough people, then we'll let you actually talk to them in real time. And I think it's kind of gross. Hey, Aaron B, she says it's kcspectator.com. So just to retcon what we said, the website is kcspectator.com. So go there to support the wife 2026. We love it. That's kind of all I really had on the rant piece of it. Was like, I'm just getting tired of it. And I'm sick of all of the inconsistency between what you're watching and what's being said underneath it due to bot farming, that it really is around 80, 85, sometimes 90% of the material that I get sent, even if it's related to a car or a motorcycle or whatever, it's reissued bot farm fodder. And it's like,
so what you're suggesting for your usage is what you would like to do is compartmentalize it to essentially what it was originally pitched to society for, which was community, like your small community of friends that you could talk to.
Kind of it.
That's what it was originally pitched as. It wasn't pitched as a news source. It wasn't pitched as a way to make money. It wasn't pitched in any of those capacities. It like grew and evolved and mutated into those things. And now they realized, okay, now that we've got them all hooked into making money and to using it as their sole source of news consumption and also consumption of goods and consumer consumption. Now that we've got them all hooked into it, now we're going to make it hard for them to do all of those things, because at that point in time, then it keeps them at the drip. It keeps them at the...
It does a couple of things. First of all, that's exactly right, because YouTube's big statement 4 years ago to the creator network was, hey, by the way, here are some new rules you're going to need to achieve these baseline analytics in order to get monetized. We're still going to run ads on your shit. We're going to make the money. You're not eligible because you're not popular enough. And when things like Instagram come around with what they did, and maybe they did it a while ago, I haven't gone live in a minute, but Saturdays when I noticed it, it was like, well, wait a minute. If this is a monetization engine and you're still selling the internet fame dream now as a probable future for some people, at least that's the way you're marketing it, I would do exactly what you're doing, which is you're not important enough. You don't get my bandwidth. So it has fundamentally changed what the sales pitch of the platform was in its early conception to now. But on the other hand, if we were to put up a poll on our social medias right now, how many people do you think would say yes versus no if I asked the question, is the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is grab and check your phone?
Oh, that's yes, immediately. That's what I do. Yeah.
A ton of people do that. And so it is that drip that you just mentioned, right?
Yeah.
And like, now that they've got us, why not force us into some form of monetization piece? This is the old man coming out being like, get off my lawn. But like, I can't even update the boys on what did you do with your car, because we were waiting to hear about your tire review and stuff, which I had stacked a bunch of content up against. just as a PSA for people that were interested, because I had reservations about some of the decisions I'd made with the last change that I made to the vehicle. And they're not going to get that update. And it sucks, because it sucks more for me, because now if I want to, I got to go shoot a video on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just kind of burned my ass a little bit, because I'm like, man, everywhere I look, and it was all day Saturday, it was like the Prime thing, and then Instagram, and then YouTube, and I was just like, why am I even doing any of this? Right? Like, so the public persona of, you know, my social media space, where I do automotive and motorcycle content and variable life content and different things like that, I kind of just want to take it out back and bury it. Be like, who's really going to give a shit? Like, I don't need any of this. They obviously don't want me, because I'm not just pounding the pavement every twice a week with new uploads, and because I don't care, you know, like it wasn't never meant for that. And that's also not what they said it was when I started. So I get that all things change over time. And I even recognize if this is a monetization engine, that I would deprioritize me as well in favor of somebody that will get clicks. But it just sucks to see. You know what I mean? Like, that's my rant. It's just
well, let me piggyback off of that, because yours comes strictly from a social kind of concept. Mine comes from a business concept.
Yeah.
Where I have to have social media, and I say it frequently, I wouldn't have Instagram or Facebook or any of it if it wasn't because I had to be on there for my business, for my job, because this is how people find their tattoos now. They don't walk into shops and flip through a portfolio. They search for them like this. And as an old timer, an old man, and a fuddy-duddy old dad, I had to come to that realization that I needed to get involved in that. And that was probably, 10 to 12 years ago. Aaron could probably attest to my pushback on it as much as I could. And I'm technologically inept. I'm not good with technology. So I had to kind of really push through and learn just the basics of social media. I don't understand it to the level that I should, and the level that all of these 20-year-old or 25-year-old tattooers understand it, and that they can actually use it as a tool. Now, I organically have 12,500 followers on Instagram. And if I put up a picture, and it doesn't matter what time of day, I know that there's certain pockets or windows, and I've dropped them in all of those pockets. It doesn't matter. I will get, at best, somewhere in the realm of 15 likes, maybe maybe 30 if it's something that just hit right, and it's rare that I get above 100. I mean, super rare, but on average I get about 15 likes or so, and it's because those are the only people that are seeing that algorithm. And the algorithm is working against me now. Is it enough to draw in the business that I need to feed my family when I get those likes and say, hey, I've got some spots open, and people message me? Yes. It is working for now to do that. But the amount of time and effort it takes for me to even post when because I don't do it right. I don't do it the way that I'm told, but I just don't have time. And so I end up doing it once a week, where I'll dump 8 photos that I did over the course of the week before, 2 weeks before, and just so that people can see my work and see that it's out there, and I can show it later. But I don't have it in me to spend any more time than how long it takes me to do that. And it takes me forever.
Oh, it's insane.
I will sit on the couch for 3 hours just posting 8 pictures, because then I've got to, I've got to make sure that it's centered. I got to make sure that the music is right. I got to make sure all the tags are on there. And it's just so much energy that I think is designed to rob you of time.
It's absurd.
And to keep you on that drip.
It's absurd, dude. I have done some seriously cinematic shit on my channel before that was a true labor of love. I don't have editors. I do all that shit alone. You know what I mean? So I'll perspective, I'll do a 3-part series where I shot 4 terabytes worth of footage riding a motorcycle all the way up and down the western United States on Highway 1 or whatever. Then I have to come home and catalog that shit, build a narrative, and then start cutting a bunch of stuff that's irrelevant to the narrative that I want to build. Then I have to edit it and color correct it and set tone to it, make sure I don't have any DCMA stuff. And if there's funny bits, make sure I highlight that. And I do it because I love it and people really enjoyed it that I communicate with or that
Right.
want to learn more about what worked in that scenario because they're about to do the same thing. What hit more than anything else is doing product review shit. Like I had 12 or 13,000 views on one of my YouTube channels almost overnight because I reviewed a tire. It was one that happened to just have come out or kind of, I don't do shit like this. You know what I mean? But for the rest of it, yeah, I'll get 60, 70 watchers per video. I know all 60 or 70 of them are people that follow me on Instagram or wherever else. And that's the community. Like I'm cool with that. But when I go to just try to update something, it's like, dude, this is such a waste of time. Because if you put something out that's cinematic that you really you do it because you love it and let it go because it doesn't do any views. I'm not part of the algorithm either that's promoted, and it's, man, you're dead on. It's the drip factor. It keeps you glued to the platform from a content producer or a content consumer. But truly, the consumption piece is dwarfing, and I'm finding less and less value in the proposition. You know what I mean? Just like, what am I doing? I would rather spend that time.
If you scroll back a couple years on my feed, if you would see that I used to get, like, I have one that, a couple of pictures that got 500 likes and 1,000 likes, and and as the years go on, you can see it decreasing down to 200 and then down to 150 and then down, and now I'm down into the 15, 20 people, and I'm okay with it as long as my family's being fed, but I still can't get away from it. I still can't cut it off because
it's a natural arm of being a business owner that you need to have. I don't need to do any of that shit from a personal scale because I don't monetize any of it. I don't get anything from this other than the ability to communicate with new riders, new drivers, people that are interested in how a part worked, that kind of shit. But more and more, just being able to touch base on a quicker level without having to go do a full shoot, a 2-day edit, and then a publication thing to then get 60 views. I'm like, dude, I could give a shit like anymore. I'm ready to hit the delete button and just be like, text me if you need me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm there. I'm truly in there. This weekend was just like a stacking of them. Like at the end of it, I'm like, what am I doing any of this for? Like, I don't even trust the content I'm being sent,
It's funny.
Anyway,
Aaron's phone died the other day. It just went to frozen screen of death.
Probably the most peaceful afternoon she's had in years.
No, she was stressed out, and that's the other problem with these things is that it's like when you're out of cigarettes or the you don't know where your next hit of heroin's coming from.
True.
But she went and got a new phone. And because she had an upgrade available and whatever, so she got. And to be fair, we're on S10s. Like this is an S10. She had an S10. They're at like S23 or whatever now.
Yeah.
So like, yeah.
My work phone is a S8. It's like if you unplug it, it instantly dies. If you plug it in, it gets really hot and stays there.
yeah. And I was, because my memory is so low on this, and that's all I do is I take pictures of tattoos. I take too many pictures that I don't use because I hate them all, and then use like 3 of the 50 that I use, right? But I don't delete any of them, and so like this whole thing is just chock full of memory loss, and it's constantly telling me that. And I'm like, I need one that has more memory in it, and of course the newer ones do. And I'm going, I'm about ready to get a new one. And then she got hers, and it made me start thinking, and I was going through a similar kind of social media frustration, kind of dip for me, that I'm just like, everyone on the internet is an idiot. And I'm so over worrying about what other people think about what's going on in Iran, or what's going on, all of these other things, that I was like, what if I just didn't have a phone anymore? What if people needed to get a hold of me, they just had to call the house or call the shop like it used to be.
Send a carrier pigeon. something.
Yeah. And if I'm not at either of those places, then you don't need to get a hold of me.
Right.
And or you can send my wife a text or whatever if it's
Oh, I'm sure
super
she'd
urgent.
love that.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me tell you your phone number. It's 206.
Yeah. Can you get the design to your husband? And she's just flooded with all your work stuff suddenly.
Right? Yeah. No, but just one of those things where I know that I can't. I know that I'm tethered to this device and to the apps that come with it. And I've definitely drawn a line in the sand. Like I refuse to get TikTok. I refuse to get any of the new ones that are coming out.
I am, after all, a technology professional by trade. There are lines for safety reasons, I just won't cross. But yeah.
Absolutely. But me, it's a learning curve. I was like, I just can't learn another one. I can't, or even put any more energy into another one. The ones that are on my phone right now take up so much time and energy of me as it is that I can't even fathom putting, like, my buddy had me, I think I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. My buddy had me put a chess app on my phone.
Yeah.
And I feel terrible because I haven't had time to play chess with him in like a week and a half. And he just saw me on Sunday. He goes, "Are we not playing chess anymore?" I was like, "It's not that. It's that I've just been buried, and I've been buried and I just don't have the time." And I keep getting notifications from people who are like trying to challenge me in chess, like just random people. And I'm like, swipe. Nope, don't have time. And I can't even put a game on my phone. I don't have time for a game. So
you might not have the memory for one either.
Yeah, at this point. But yeah, so it's one of those things where I just don't have the things I would like to do. I don't have the time to do it because social media has got me on such a trip that I need to keep these here in order to put monetary value into my life, even at a minimal level. It's not like it's making me rich. It's just enough to keep the lights on. And then at that point, I'm foregoing games like chess or any other game I would like to put on this device that I can't not keep on me at all times. I can't go into a bathroom without it. I can't do, it is as attached to me as my wallet that I've had in my pocket since I was 15 years old, and so the addiction to it is definitely something I do not deny. The addiction to social media is different. It is something that I resent. I resent it to a point where if I did not have to have it, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And it's only my occupation that keeps me there. But for somebody like you, who, although you're in a technology field and market, you primarily use these social media tools and apparatuses for precisely that social stuff.
Yeah, I mean
not business related. So I could see you being like, I don't need this, and unplugging.
Yeah, the market knowledge piece is also invaluable because I have to stay up on what's relative in the industry that I work and stuff like that. So from time to time, those RSS feed style posts will come through that are great. But truly, it's like this whole last year I've been cutting, and I'm like, how much can I cut and still be okay? Like television went away, then the streaming services kind of went away down to I think just one or two. And then after that, it's like, well, do I really need the social media? Because I'm getting more jaded at having to research everything that I'm looking at to find validity in it rather than any entertainment value. And I know there's pros and cons to that because it's a principal way in which you and I communicate and stuff regarding the show and other things. But man, yeah, I'm wondering how easy would it be to just cut the cable on that shit too, you know?
Yeah. So I feel your frustration.
I do want to go on with another topic though that will keep me in the firmly in the old man corner for the rest of the show.
Fair enough.
I want to talk about some banking stuff that I think everyone should be interested in. And no one's going to read it, and that's fine. So I did. But
you got me pegged, man. I don't. this stuff is so above my head, but I'm glad that I have you to kind of keep me appraised of it.
So, yeah, so somebody's gotta hoist the glasses and get involved. No, I think it's relevant. Like, big banking just got a lot more flexible, but I see that there's an inevitable cliff coming on the other end of it because there's no such thing as a free lunch. So in, I think, November, but late 2025, U.S. regulators, the Fed, the FDIC, and the OCC jointly finalized a rule to loosen leverage requirements for big banks. And the implementation starts tomorrow. So I thought it was timely to bring this up because I've been kind of following this for a bit. It is very boring sounding, but it does affect everybody. So I will go on. The entire U.S. banking regulatory system, so all the departments I just mentioned, they work together, not one rogue agency, to update a rule for the largest global banks. There's generally around 8, maybe 8 to 10 of them, and I'll go through a few examples. But they are commonly referred to in the global financial circuits as too big to fail, which is why I'm keenly interested in how this goes. What they decided to do to update the rule was adjusting what's called the leverage rule. And if you do want to research it, it is technically called the regulatory capital rule, modifications to the enhanced supplementary leverage ratio, or the ESLR. So these are standards for U.S. bank holding companies and their subsidiary insured depository institutions. So it controls how much banks can lend and invest relative to how much of their own money they have to hold aside, right? So you can't overlend or you're going to be upside down. We've seen some Silicon Valley banks do this and some other areas where they're way over leveraged and they did not have enough of their own capital to cover their ass, right?
Right.
So you have to have some as a safety cushion. So before the olden days, before tomorrow, the rule was very strict and kind of blunt. And it didn't really care if a bank was dealing with something super safe like U.S. government bonds or something very risky like credit card debt. It treated everything as the exact same. And because of that, banks started pulling back from certain activities, including lending and key financial markets. So the regulators stepped in and said, we should probably make an aim at making this a little more flexible. Now, the rule is, let me find my spot here. The rule scales based on how risky the bank is, not the asset. Okay. So if you're following, this means there's probably going to be a rubric of the bank's behavior that slides them up and down a risky scale on how much they can lend out. But there is no oversight. So the rule scales based on how risky the bank itself is, and in general, it lets banks operate with way more freedom instead of forcing them to sit on as much idle capital as they can to cover their own assets. So what does that mean for all of us? On the positive side, I think this is going to make it way easier for banks to lend money. So things like mortgages, business loans, credit card accesses, all these can improve. And it will help keep financial markets running smoothly, which matters a lot more than probably everyone thinks it does. They kind of reference this regulatory system as sort of like the plumbing of the economy. It's sort of the backbone, especially when it's aimed at these big, too big to fail banks, right? So they're now allowed to operate with a slightly less of a safety cushion. So if something goes wrong, there's much less of a buffer there long term. And when you give banks way more flexibility, there's always the risk that they take on too much. That can contribute to bigger problems way down the line. But that's tomorrow. Let's talk about today. The simplest takeaway is that regulators loosened a very strict rule to help money move more freely through the system, but they did it by accepting more risk. And for everyday people, you'll probably see easier access to loans, smoother markets, and if there's a credit crunch like we've seen in the 2008 housing crisis and the dot bomb era in the 2000s and again in COVID, it's less likely that they're going to restrict your credit line because they'll have more flexibility against the assets that they've lent on. So pick how you want to view this story. The neutral viewpoint would be something like, hey, the Feds just made the bank capital rules way more flexible, so lending and markets will probably work better and maybe in our favor in a shorter amount of time. You could be positive on what I just said and say, this should make loans easier to get and make markets more stable, which I believe it will. Then there's the skeptical angle, which I'm kind of predispositioned to take on all of this stuff, is they're letting big banks take on more risk to boost the economy on their own, which is also true. All three of those statements are probably true. And to be clear, the rule doesn't hit your local bank directly. It's aimed at some of the global banks, but as they are the economy and industry trendsetters, there's going to be a trickle-down effect. There always is. So the GSIB, and I wish this was a joke, this is what they're referred to, GSIBs, the Global Systemically Important Banks. And there's usually 8, but they kind of flip around. It's your JP Morgan Chases, Bank of America, Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and on and on and on. But those banks basically, like I said, set the tone for the entire financial system. So even if you bank locally, you'll probably feel the effects through the loan rates, the credit availability, and the overall market stability. And why? Because there must be some form of competition to get you to sign a loan with Bob's Bank instead of JP Morgan Chase. So I think availability is going to go down and down and down where you can reach more of these things. And in the short term, that's a net positive, right? If you want to start a small business, the loans will probably be a little more flexible and, more risk tolerant than they used to be risk averse. And I think that's important because the overall market stability will in short term improve. My question to everyone upon learning that this rule takes effect tomorrow is how long before they overlend and they get real abusive with their newfound freedom before things start to collapse, this time with a rigid rule to keep those SIABs very bluntly and in their lanes. How long before that fails? Because there's no rubric that says you are a risk classification of high, being a bank or a financial institution versus anyone else. I think we're in for a weird road in the future with a rule like this. But 0 to 10 years, this is awesome. This is going to be really awesome because it does make a lot of sense and it does keep lubricity going with the U.S. economy. Even when massive things like COVID happen, it will withstand most of that. The problem becomes how long before you've over leveraged yourself like some of the other smaller financial institutions we've seen as recent as a couple of years ago. I mean, and a prime example of that is that Silicon Valley Bank situation that happened. So I've been following this since November, trying to figure out, will they actually codify this? They did. And it all starts tomorrow. So the banks are looking at their asset packs and coverage against liquidity way different than they were today. And I think that's important because that's going to change a lot. It's going to add a lot of opportunity, but it's also pretty scary if it gets abused.
Right. And I mean, let's be real. History has told us that like the moral bumpers on these people are very secure. They'll never abuse this. So
airtight.
Yeah.
AIG, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Well, I'm sorry, what? Yeah, go on.
What is this? How will this affect, if at all? How will this affect like mortgage rates? How will this affect loans for houses? Will just the housing economy in general, is it going to lower housing prices and interest rates?
I think it has the high potential to lower the interest rate. High potential doesn't mean that it will. It's not going to touch the inventory or the economical process of getting more on there, like more on the books, unless a bunch of would-be contractors get loans now to start that small business they've always wanted to into an industry where they can create more. That's kind of what they're hoping for, right? This is a new boost to the American economy, because you can take that. It's the risk in, well, I'm more comfortable lending you against a house is a very low risk loan. You can't wreck your house on the freeway, right? And then just come kick you out of your house and resell it. So to your point, all of those are going to be more favorable in the short term, no matter what step of the ladder that you're on. I think it has the potential to drop the APR in the short term, but it makes the ability to get a home loan probably a little easier with this. Like if I still made $100 a year last year, I'm still making $100 a year this year. I might now qualify for that loan with the same income rate because they can overextend and be a little more flexible without having to hold assets back against their leverage. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So minute ways that will affect it can, the most tangible way I think I could see this falling down is I think the interest rates could lower as a result of this, because they'll want stretched longer loan terms, more generated cash flow over years. And that might be the most tangible byproduct in the short term. Otherwise, it being changed technically doesn't help any one of the economical states unless more people start buying in and getting involved. And that's what they're hoping for.
Right. Yeah. Not that we are allowed to give out financial advice, so nobody take this as financial advice. But if one were to take advantage of this situation in the next 5 to 10 years, it would probably be beneficial before that bubble pops, before it becomes that they've overextended themselves.
Yeah.
And kind of take advantage of it now. But I don't know.
I also see a universe in which, like, look, if you think you're going to buy a house in the next few years and you're saving up for it, when you do your due diligence on your lender, you probably want to go with the bigger brand that's more reputable, that has good service history, that has a lot of assets on the books. You'll probably see more Bob and Jane's discount home lending popping up here and there. And still, as an informed consumer, maybe do your research before supporting Bob and Jane because they may be over leveraged. But yeah, absolutely. I think it opens the door and the opportunity for more transactions to occur in the housing market, in common retail, for small businesses, particularly looking to start up. I think it's a net positive in the short term.
Does this release anything for in-house manufacturing? Will this affect anything for manufacturing businesses within the continental United States?
Boy, tough to say. Like if one already exists and they're able to take more of a revolver against their business, if they need more loan money to get through a hump, I think the answer is yes, that it would be easier to do that because the banks now have less of a stick and more of a carrot to be as flexible as they choose to be. So, but obviously these banks don't want to race out and get a credit rating of you're the riskiest lender out there, and suddenly everyone you're doing business with is at risk because of your poor financial health. That's always a possibility, but I don't see it. Like new startups, yes, would be positively impacted that way. With the regulation lifting like this, but existing manufacturing, if they needed more of a loan to cover something or go a little bit bigger on a revolver, I think yes, also. But will it increase their output and stuff? It depends on how that business is managed. What is the structure and the ethics and absolutely.
How do you think this is going to affect the jobs markets?
I think it may increase job availability in the financial sector in some minute way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you want to start your own business, this is the most favorable news you've heard in a long time, to go into business for yourself. Truly. Otherwise, I'm not sure how that helps the job market, except for the financial sector in some small way. There will be residuals, right? Everything's an ecosystem to some degree. There will be a fringe ripple effect, but other than that, I can't see it opening brand new opportunities to step into new high-paying white-collar jobs anywhere, kind of thing. Personally,
no, I was just saying that the idea of the banks being more open to lending for small businesses, creating job markets in that regard, where they're hiring people because, hey, I need 15 people here, I need 20 people there, and
Oh yeah, imagine the startup that does project by project work, right? Well, I could go to
yeah,
get a loan out, pre-hire these people, and hit the ground running on projects because there's more flexibility in the loan on the back end, and then the front end is I get paid from the client because I got it done on time and under budget or whatever the case is. Absolutely, that would increase the job market for sure. I think.
yeah. Well, cool. That's highly fascinating.
Yeah.
And this comes into play tomorrow.
That starts tomorrow, April 1,
this
2026.
Independent banking thing? Is this what Congress pushed through? Is this a Trump administration
That's
decision?
what's fascinating to me is I think the idea was sponsored by more modern economists, and there are some arguments on the other side to my skepticism that are saying, wait a minute, so what determines the risk factor of the financial institution writing the loan then if we don't have this hard rule, or at least as hard as it was? This was done by the Fed, the FDIC, U.S. regulators, and the OCC all got together and made this happen. Everybody worked on this, not just one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so are all the leaders of all of those institutions are they all handpicked by the Trump administration at this point?
No, all is no. Some are yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just curious if this was the brainchild of the administration that is trying to loosen up the economy at this point in time before
Yes.
a midterm.
At the root of it, yes. This is very much let's increase the economical lubricity, and here's a very rigid rule we can remove. So that way, if JP Morgan Chase for every $100 had to keep 10 back, they no longer have to keep all $10 back and can then do low risk investments of their own, like put that $10 in the US Treasury, buy a bond with it, do what, like adapt your money market to include other theaters of operation. That's what that was designed for those big ones. I'm just saying the trickle down effect to the local bank has to be there, in that if I can't get a loan with JP Morgan Chase, or they're offering 0.5% more on APR than Northwest Financial of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and they're offering me 0.5% less, well, shit, that's 0.5 point over a 20-year loan. Maybe I'll go with the local guy, and they'll take your money. So I think
stay competitive.
Yeah,
right?
I think the market competition is now increased as a result of the flexibility being increased as well in the big banks. That's my second order of operation thought process around that.
It seems logical to me.
Yeah.
It seems logical, and for somebody who's kind of I wouldn't say financially illiterate, but somebody who does not spend a lot of time in these kind of fields of market, it makes sense to me that if you loosen up those kind of constraints, it will create the ability for the bigger guys to be able to lend more freely and take on more risk, which at that point will then make the smaller institutions and the smaller banks and building and loan, that they'll be able to, at that point, in order to stay afloat, have to compete with what these bigger institutions are capable of doing now.
Yeah.
And so now what that does is that puts them in a position to go, well, I'll give you 0.5% less, on that interest rate. And then you go, oh, okay, well then I'm going to go with the small mom and pop shop that's going to give me a better percentage rate. Even if it's just a little bit, it'll feel good, and on top of that, I'm getting a better deal because you're competing with the big guy.
Yes.
So now, for safety purposes, from a consumer, it would probably be in your better interest to go with somebody who has a better risk scenario as a larger institution.
Something that's managed well is your best bet, regardless of the size of the financial institution. But to your point, like, how much coverage do they have against their assets? And that's where it should encourage people to maybe keep track of the earnings reports of some of these big banks they do business with, or the bank that you do business with, and things like that. Like, well, how much debt asset ratio do you have? What is what is your net asset value for the things, if you're publicly traded, that are available to me on a long enough timeline? Are you responsible enough to pay back dividends to your investors? Do you cover your assets or your liabilities with assets appropriately? Is there too much risk? Because what this effectively means for the retail consumer, the yous and me's of the world, is access to credit just got infinitely easier. That's the biggest leverage risk they've got, but it's also the highest earning potential they can get. You know, so when people ask me about like investment advice and stuff, and it's like, look, if you take an average to slightly above average stock market over the course of 10 years and your return on your investment is around 8 to 10%, let's call it 10% and say things are really, really good, but your credit card bill is 25% APR, you still owe the bank 15% of all the dollars you're generating, even if you're investing on the stock market. So high interest credit card debt is a home run for all the lending institutions that hand out credit cards. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, it's like you have to work infinitely harder to make money off of the dollar that you're saving, depending on, you know, in that very nominal example I just gave you. So think about how the banks make their money against that APR, right? Well, now they have way more flexibility to give out a lot more risk than they used to be rigidly held to a standard for. And now you can see where on a long enough timeline, I might have a contentious problem with that, because if these too big to fail banks get over leveraged to a certain point, that equals global financial crisis on a long enough timeline. So again, I enjoy following this stuff because you know, it speaks to what the future may or may not look like based on the actions that we're doing now and stuff like that. And it's something that's been on my radar for a bit. I'm not a financial advisor at all. You know what I mean? I'm a guy that's more of a financial enthusiast when it comes to looking at this stuff. I think, again, short-term 0 to 10, this is great news for bolstering the U.S. economy to take more risks in more startups, more business, more commerce, more availability to credit, more access to freedom in the financial industries, sectors being able to touch places they haven't before, banks being able to take that rigid, I won't call it 10%, it's probably more, the rigid coverage of assets and maybe investing those back into the market a little bit better. It's a rising tide, but if you abuse that shit, there's nothing underneath it. And this time the bubble is the entire world financial organizations against those too big to fail banks. That's a scary proposition if it gets abused.
Right.
So, you know, big fan of regulatory oversight in that capacity, but I thought it was maybe people clicked off this already, but I find it interesting as the old guy in the room for this episode.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's more interesting to a lot of people than you realize. I think a lot of people are kind of paying attention to these things now. So, but yeah.
Yeah. If you got investments or you do banking somewhere, read their financial statements when they come out publicly. Look at the numbers that they're producing to the investors and to the customers, because they're legally obligated to. So check them out and be like, oh shit, what is this all about? It's the same grievance I have with any bubbles on the stock market, AI being the most popular one. Like, how are you going to take a multi-trillion-dollar market share that you're claiming to have when your net assets are raking in only tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars? That's a massive gap against a promise that you can't ship a product. None of you can ship a product. Like, this doesn't scale at all. So it's stuff like that where you look at the financials and the earnings reports, and you start to ask questions like, well, are you over leveraged? Are you being responsible? Do I care to invest in you? These are things that represent a lot of people's retirement futures, you know? So read those statements and start paying attention to stuff like this, and, you know, make decisions for yourself from a more informed perspective, I guess, is my goal with this.
Yeah. Fantastic. Good news. Good.
Yeah.
Well, are you ready for this conspiracy corner?
Man, I want to say yes. I know I'm not at the end of the day, but I'm going to jump in anyway.
Yeah. All right. This one.
You guys know the drill. When the tinfoil's out, we're not held liable for any professional or personal credibility with Conspiracy Corner, which is what we're entering right now. All right, go on.
So I gave you a couple options this week because I wanted to kind of tackle this, but I also know that it's a touchy subject.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to make sure that you were comfortable with it. And I sent you over a link, and I wanted to tackle the USS Liberty incident.
Yeah.
And this is a hot topic right now, especially when you've got the Tucker Carlsons and the Candace Owens and the Nick Fuenteses and a lot of that kind of faction of the internet that whenever they're in a anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, Jew kind of rhetoric stream where they're going nuts or going after somebody, they always kind of every time you see one of those feeds, you end up seeing somebody mention, look up the USS Liberty.
Yeah. So what technically happened with the USS Liberty? Because all
the
roads
USS
lead back to these narratives, but what technically happened with USS Liberty?
So the USS Liberty was a naval technical research ship, a spy ship, essentially, and it was attacked in the 6-day war in the Gulf of the Sinai, off the Sinai coast.
This was like Egypt versus Israel. I think Lebanon was in there.
Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon were all attacking Israel in 1967.
Yeah. Okay.
It took 6 days, and Israel won the war within 6 days against those countries. It was pretty determined very early on that they were going to. There wasn't really they took out most of the military bases pretty quickly. And Jordan and Lebanon dipped out, and then Jordan actually they folded on day 5, and Egypt folded on day 6. On the 6th day of the war, the USS Liberty was cruising through that particular body of water when it wasn't really supposed to be. Like they had told people, but they were going. At the time, the ship was in international waters north of the Sinai Peninsula, about 25 to nautical miles north from the Egyptian city of Ashur.
Okay.
They had a different mission entirely. They were just kind of cutting through, and they had told the U.S. government and the Israeli government that that's what they were doing. Now, during the time frame, there was a situation where a city off the coast was being shelled, or they thought it was being shelled by Egypt, and the Israelis were reacting to it, and they thought it was coming from a ship. Now, there was a lot of miscommunications going on from basically the Israelis or the U.S. government trying to send this ship messages, and they weren't going through. And then the Israelis not knowing what this ship looked like. It looked like a battleship, and they thought it was the ship that was firing on their base. Now, they had reconnaissance planes go over, and ultimately they got fired upon by the Israelis by 2 fighter jets, and then they sent in a ship to do some recovery to come help them, and the Liberty thought it was being attacked by water this time and started firing on the ship, on the Israeli ship, and they fired back, and they did a lot of damage. Ultimately, 34 men died on that ship. This was June 8th of 1967.
So just for perspective, there wasn't like 5G back then. When we're talking about the miscommunications and the wires and the transmissions being sent to this boat, probability is high that not all of them got through for just technology reasons. But the other side of this to keep in mind is that all we know is that it was there, it was eventually attacked, and then they claim, and these are all documented in government addendums basically and like inquiries that the Israelis had sent boats to go help. The Americans thought, hey, more attackers, and opened a volley of fire. So then they returned fire and caused some pretty significant damage to the boat. So that's the events that occurred. What we're going to talk about is sort of the narrative branching off from that with the how long, who did it, and why attacks happened. And I think this is the most fascinating part. So I wanted to establish what it was before we got too wrapped around the horn on the details, because this one's crazy.
Right. So the spin-off theory is by a gentleman, and he's not the only one. There's a couple of people from this boat that has taken the narrative that this was an intentional provocation from Israel, that they were intending to attack this boat in a kind of false flag situation, blame it on Egypt, to incite the United States into World War III in order to expand to greater Israel. That's kind of the motivation in the grandiose sense of why.
And I think it's worth noting,
Phil Turney,
noting at this point that this is day 6 of a 6-day war, where most of the, if you want to call them access to that, since Israel's a national ally of the United States, were well underway of surrendering, and later that day, all of them surrendered. So the idea that you presented that just to that narrative that we would drag America into a war that's over in 6 hours seems odd. But go on.
It does. So a lot of this comes from a gentleman who's the president of this particular Liberty Committee. He's the one that is in charge of the website. He's the one. It's the U.S. Liberty Veterans Association, honoring the past and the future. They are an organization that he is the spokesperson for, that goes around and does tours, and he's done a couple of debates. And he's the one who goes on a lot of podcasts and talks about how the Zionists and Israel are this evil organization that
also a survivor and veteran of that very attack on the boat.
Yeah, he was on the boat. So, and from his point of view from that boat is that this was not accidental. It was not a mistake of communication. It wasn't anything of the sort. It was a provocation by Lyndon B. Johnson, who was involved and was trying to get them into a false flag event. Now, do I deny that false flag events occur? Absolutely not. I think that false flags happen all the time, and I think they're well documented. Do I think that this was a false flag attempt? No, because none of the details add up. The motivation doesn't make sense. But from his perspective, he believes that there was an intentionality to it, that his brethren were killed for the purpose of creating a narrative to draw the United States into a war with Egypt and the surrounding nations, not even really sure exactly who the targeted people were. But it was because Israel wanted to drag us into a war that they already had handled. They didn't need us. And so I think that his perspective comes from an incredibly emotional situation. I could fully understand being in a scenario that's emotional, but I think it's been tainted by other aspects of bias that I think when pressed, he gets very frustrated about. And there is a lot to this story that doesn't add up, that doesn't make sense to the narrative that Phil Turney is trying to illustrate. And do I think he's a liar? Yes, I do. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I think the man's a liar. I think that he has created a narrative that, and it is irresponsible of us to think that just because someone served in the armed forces that they are completely an honorable human. There are many people who served in the armed forces that turned out to be murderous bastards and evil people long after they got out. It does not give you a lifelong signal of virtue, whether you were in or out. It should craft you into a virtuous, honorable human being. But that doesn't happen. Like, oftentimes we kind of just, like doctors, we just give them passes that they're never going to lie because they were in the military. They were honest. Now, I come from a long line of honorable military people. My grandfather, my cousin Victor, like a lot of people that are very close to me were part of the beauty that is the American Armed Forces. So I have absolute respect for it. I do not want this to get tangled up into that. The reality is I think that this situation was tainted by a very obvious prejudice that they could pin their guilt on, that they could pin their grief on. And
I think it's notable as well to point out that before we get classified into tinfoil hat wearing Zionists, that the other side of the argument is that there are no less than a dozen, and I think probably more, federal, national, and international inquiries into this incident that are kind of factually going against this one particular veteran's narrative of the situation happening. And what you and I watched is a very interesting debate, so to speak, between Cam, what's his name?
Cam Higbee.
Cam Higbee did a thing about an hour and a half. Fascinating watch because he cites sources that include testimony from the guy that he's debating. And I forget his name now.
Phil Turney.
Phil Turney. And says, well, look, what I don't doubt what you're saying has powerful emotional relevance, but this is your testimony. These are all the testimonies of all the other people that were survivors. And here's all the inquiries and stuff. The timelines don't necessarily match what you're saying. And he starts picking this guy apart. So it's not us just snap picking his side on this one real quick. Really, you should look into all of the wires, the air traffic control towers from the military, and some of the claims that become more and more outlandish as that interview goes on from Phil Turney around the timeline of the attack, the nature of the attackers, the insignia and regalia of the attackers. Like, a lot of the stories are starting to cross one another in the wires of his own testimony, even in just that hour and a half. But what's great about Cam is he started to pick apart stuff that he said, well, in your entire public interview history, which I've watched and cited you and all these different things, you're saying different stuff now than you were then. And what it slowly started to boil down into when he was pressed on some of these things was unsubstantiated claims, just stuff like, well, I talked to this guy who said this before he died, or that guy's full of shit.
On his deathbed. Yeah.
And it's just like, well, wait a minute. Like,
where he's literally venerating a captain of the ship who went against his narrative and said, no, I love the man, but he went against the narrative. And he goes, it called him a liar at the same time. Like, he contradicted himself an innumerable amount of times in that interview.
The reason it's important to call out all the inquiries and stuff is if among the dozen or more inquiries, international, national, federal, and otherwise, military and non, if they found one iota of something else to reopen an investigative case on this stuff to see if this really was a malicious act by Israel, they would have over and over again. The FBI looked at it. The CIA looked at it. He goes on and on. Congressional inquiries, military, police, the Israelis launched an investigation. Everybody launched an investigation in this. And this was from, like, the attack occurred in 1967, and it's now a hot topic in 2026 because of anti-Jewish prevalent narrative that's swiffering through the annals of society at this point in time. I find that coincidence a little curious, but it is fascinating to watch the fact that this guy just kind of tumbles down and down and down and down this rabbit hole that makes less and less sense the more you watch it. It is fascinating to see. So
some of the notes.
Take both sides in before you call us wacky Zionists is all I'm saying.
Yeah. Some of the notes that I took from the debate, because I watched it again
please.
today. I had watched this a couple years ago, and or like a year or two ago when it happened, and it was almost sad because there was a lot of respect in this debate,
Yeah.
and they kept it very tonally even, and Cam did a really good job of keeping his tenor and keeping it cool, and just coming to him with facts. He didn't want to disparage the guy, but he made it very hard not to, because
Right.
Phil was contradicting himself, coming up with false, just straight up craziness.
At some point, it got
And-
wacky. Some of the shit that he was
Yeah.
saying. Yeah.
And so it made it hard to keep the composure. But by the end of it, he was, basically pointing at at the camera going, well, why don't you join the military and watch all your friends turn into piles of meat, stuff
yeah.
like that. And like, Cam's like, that's not what we're doing here,
Right.
and he kept it very respectful, but Cam's very smart and he's very quick, and he did his due diligence. He did his research. He watched all of Phil's interviews, all of them, and going all the way back. He
The
read his books.
documentaries
He
that
went
his
through all
company
the
produced,
all of it.
the books that they'd written, like he
Yeah.
really went like full immersion on this one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, some of the notes I took from it, let's see. Israel believed Egypt was shelling the shore. They identified the Liberty as a warship off the coast of Said. Liberty was in unauthorized waters, and Israel didn't know. It was like Phil Turning kept saying it went on for hours, 2 hours,
Right.
Of just being shelled and attacked. First and foremost, if you're getting bombed and shot by 2 jet fighter pilots for 2 solid hours, that boat wouldn't have been on top of the water, and there would have been no survivors.
Nor would those planes have the munitions to keep an onslaught up unchecked for 2 straight hours if they're trying to sink a ship.
He said, in actuality, when you look at the documents and all of the eyewitness testimony from both sides, that it was a 14-minute aerial attack with a 2-minute water engagement where they got torpedoed by the Israelis after they fired on the Israelis.
Right.
So 38 minutes in total, with the gap in between the aerial situation and then when they recognized who they were and sent out basically a boat to go check on them and start getting fired on. And then they didn't finish the destruction. If that was the point, the boat never sank.
Right.
So like, it sat there on fire, being completely dismantled from the damage, but they didn't sink the ship. You think that they would have kind of buried some evidence there, Well,
and another thing, the first thing that made me really raise my eyebrow and be like, what is it? The nature of the testimony from Phil was they were unmarked vessels at first, and then later on they had obvious Star of Davids on them that he could see.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was like a clear onslaught by the almost what we would surmise as most, if not all, of the Israeli Air Force attacking one boat at one point when their mission at large at that time in the moment was to be attacking Egypt. Yeah. So they all just stopped and said, let's go get this boat instead. Like, there was so much stuff that just didn't make sense in his testimony.
Well, part of it was that he said that the unmarked ones, which at first apparently they had Stars of David on their first trips around, but then they came back unmarked.
Yeah.
And his theory is that what it was is they were trying to make it seem like they were Egyptian planes. But all of the Egyptian Air Force had been destroyed 2 days prior.
Yeah.
They had no planes left. And so therefore, it would not have made sense if they were trying to frame Egypt for attacking this U.S. boat by using planes. They should have done it by water. Egypt still had a small navy, so it wouldn't have made sense to say, "Oh yeah, we blew up all their, Israel blew up all their planes except for these two that happened to come out here and attack this boat and bring U.S. into this war."
Well, that was
It
his
didn't make
first
any
recollection
sense.
of events. The
That
second one was
first
that
recollection.
was that there
There
were
was
like 30
30
aircraft.
Yeah,
Like,
so that's when
they still didn't bring
when
the
he
boat
tried
down.
to-
30 of them. Like,
30 of them. Yeah.
all right, that's
From-
none of that
and he
makes
goes-
sense.
And Cam's like, I don't even think they had 30. You
Right.
think they brought the entire Israeli Air Force for one boat? Like, that doesn't even make sense.
One,
Like,
that's a egregious waste of resources on one target, and two, the target still didn't sink. It
Yeah.
so you couldn't do it for just 2 planes for 2 hours. Surely 30 planes would increase the odds of dropping the time to sink that thing down by a wide margin. But yeah, it really started to fall off as that interview went on.
And he kept bringing up the motivation, it being that it was to bring us into World War III. But that didn't happen.
Right.
So, Operation failed. Like, I don't understand. Like, World War III for what? Like,
There was nothing to
we weren't even
gain.
involved.
Yeah, even if that was,
We were on the ground. We weren't anywhere near there. So,
yeah,
like,
if that
what
was a
the gain
motivation,
for it?
there was no end game to that motivation being a primary force. Like, what would that have gained Israel by using American forces in a World War III scenario at the last day of a 6-day war with Egypt, Lebanon?
Which they
and
already
Jordan.
had under wraps.
That was
They
already
had it
won.
under wraps. Yeah, and they also didn't take any of that land in 1967. By the way, they gave any land that they occupied, they gave back.
Right.
So, like, Jordan is still Jordan.
Doesn't make a
Egypt
lot of
is
sense.
Still Egypt. So they weren't expanding into greater Israel.
Paul
So,
Osby says in chat, 30 biplanes, with pistols and hand grenades? Possible. Possible. That's...
So the tech that he was talking about was not used at the time. So, like, he
Right.
kept saying that they had heat-seeking missiles. Now, at the time in 1967, they did have infrared, like French infrared heat-seeking missiles, but they were terrible. They
had
barely
an
worked.
IR tech for sure. It was
Right.
wildly unreliable, even
But
by
nowhere near
their
the
own
precision shots that Phil was saying that it hit all of their guns and all of their,
Yeah.
it was nowhere near that, and Israel didn't have access to it. So, or like the napalm stuff
Yeah.
that they hit them with napalm, which didn't make any sense either. Why would
Right.
you use napalm on a ship?
Napalm great against organic targets, not great against a ship, generally speaking.
So Captain McGonagall and Lloyd Painter were two guys that were brought up a lot who absolutely went against what Phil Turney was saying, who were both on the boat.
It's in their testimony from 1967 to present day as well, under all of the naval inquiries that were given. And that kind of shocked me that he still kind of pressed it. Like, what?
Yeah. Now, one of the things that seems they're like really don't want to talk about is the idea of the friendly fire situation. In the fog of war, even in the daytime, this happens in every war ever. That there is situations where communications get messed up. The US, by the way, are some of the biggest contributors to accidental friendly fire. We do it all the time. Like in the Middle East, in Afghanistan, in Vietnam, in every conflict we've had across the world, there has been incidences where we recognized that it was an accident, that allies fired on us, that we fired on allies.
I have personally heard
happens.
firsthand accounts of that happening where I was asked not to bring the story up anywhere, but it was aired out in a confidential manner where people actually relived their experiences through friendly fire activities in the GWOT.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're
happens.
right. It definitely happens.
to the point where the cousin that I previously mentioned who spent time in Afghanistan, and when he got out of the military, he currently lives in Virginia and he works for a company called Khaki. And Khaki develops targeting systems for small munitions and large munitions. So everything from large craft and tanks down all the way down to, you know, the battle rifles that they use. Targeting systems that are actually designed to keep friendly fire from happening. So it's enough of a problem that there's an industry where my cousin gets to train these things and actually go to other countries and teach other militaries. They sell them this targeting systems saying, hey, look, we know this is a big problem. So with this digital targeting system, you can actually figure out who's who with this targeting system. And my cousin trains them. He loves this job. He gets to blow stuff up and shoot things all day long and teach people how to do it. But his job wouldn't even be necessary if this wasn't such a historical problem. My problem is that we understand this to the point where it's not even topical.
Right.
It's not even something that people even discuss unless it's the one time Israel did it.
Right.
The one time Israel did it, all of a sudden we're like, nope.
That's that association at 2026 that I find convenient that I mentioned. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden now Israel is this nefarious, you know, clutching
Dr. Evil,
you know, Dr. Evil meme because they did it one time and they didn't sink the ship. In fact, they sent people to rescue the rest of the people and then apologized on the world stage for it and said, yeah, this sucked. We didn't mean to do it. Sorry, our bad. Like, that's something that you don't do if you're trying to start World War III or if you did it on purpose. Like, that's crazy. So, yeah, none of it makes sense. The idea that they're using this in any capacity on the internet as a cudgel or a weapon against Israel is absurd. It's laughable. It's comical and it's stupid. It is, in any sense, on a military stage, something that happens. It was an accident. It was not intentional, and they absolutely.
I mean, no less tragic, but to say that there's a cabal between LBJ and the regime in Israel at that point in time to sacrifice American lives in order to justify a greater Israel narrative entering a World War III on the 6th day of a 6-day war that they were 66.66% complete with and 100% complete with only 6 hours later.
Yeah.
Doesn't compute to me. Unfortunately, with all of the inquiries and stuff that are available on the topic, I'm kind of I'm leaning with the government on this one, which you don't hear me say a lot.
Right. But I would recommend to anybody who might be skeptical of this and has heard this narrative and is kind of
watch that interview. God, yeah.
Watch that debate. Watch that debate between Cam Higbee and Phil Turney. Your eyes will be open to the fact that Phil Turney doesn't know what he's talking about, and in fact gets pretty emotional about it and makes stuff up as he goes. He tried to tell Cam that one of the fighter jets only had the capacity for 4 missiles.
Right.
When in fact, Cam looked it up on the spot and he goes, actually, it's 55.
Yeah, it's 55 is the armor complement that aircraft can carry.
Yeah. And he's like, well, I don't know. I don't know. How am I supposed to know? Well, he's all, you made the claim. He's all trying to say that it was more than 2 aircraft. Then he said it was upwards of 30 aircraft who shelled over 300 times that ship. That doesn't make sense. He's making stuff up as he goes because he has
he's a virtue shield.
Hatred. Yeah.
No one's gonna knock the guy that lived through it. But then if you get past that, there's the narrative shield.
Yeah. And so, and I think that he has an axe to grind, and I think that he has allowed himself to be filled with a bias that and a prejudice that creates the boogeyman he needs to feel justified for the situation that was a very tragic situation, and put blame where
it sure mathematically feels like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, when you get to the near the end of the interview or the debate, you see him kind of lose it because he knows he's kind of lost and got caught lying, and it's almost sad because he is an elderly guy, and it's sad. And I do have a lot of respect for vets, you know. So to see a vet get kind of kneecapped on his own topic by a kid who's 25 years old who just knows more about the situation than the guy who was there was pretty.
It was wild.
Pretty hard to watch. Yeah,
it was wild.
At the same time, I'm not cool with conspiracy theories that aim to denigrate not only our military, because that's what this is. It's to say that the U.S. was in cahoots with this cabal situation.
Yeah.
And they've been in the past. Don't get me wrong, but like, you know, I'm only going to point blame when it's a confirmed blame. Like if it's a confirmed kill, cool. But I'm not going to add to gasoline to the fire. We're a great country and we've done great things. So I'm only going to blame it for the things that, you know, we can say. Like, we are by no means do not have blood on our hands and are not guilty for a lot of things. But the premise of this situation is a conspiracy theory that I just will not tolerate or even get behind, because it's not true, and they use it as a truth in order to hate on an entire group of people.
Yeah,
that didn't do it on purpose.
Sure, mathematically seems like it.
Yeah. So
join us next week when we tear your religion apart on Conspiracy Corner. No. I'm with you on this one, man.
Yeah. So, but if anybody wants to check it out, check out Cam Higbee with Phil Turney. It's very easy. You just put Cam Higbee USS Liberty and it will pop right up for you. It's about an hour and a half long. It's a great watch. So I highly recommend it. Definitely something that I think needs to be explored more. I've noticed that this was real hot last year. Like, they kept bringing it up last year, but after this interview, this particular sphere of the Groypers and the anti-Semitic people, what ends up this one has kind of died down a little bit. They're using less and less of look into the USS Liberty, because this was such a dismantling of the facts that I think it's hard for them not to have this pop up into the comment section every time and go, oh yeah. You know, and Phil has been doing less and less interviews lately. So we'll see. We'll see what if this one has any more legs past 2026, if they're going to keep trying to revive this nonsense. But yeah.
We'll dig up the dead horse and beat on it some more. And in fact, Phil, why don't you come on in here? We have a surprise for the audience. Oh, man. Yikes.
That was
Conspiracy Corner. That was brought to you by a future sponsor of this show. And the like. Yeah, that was a fun one. Kind of good. Let's keep those frowns upside down. You have a dope this week. It's King Randall. Talk about this. What happened here? What's going on with the dope this week?
So for about a year now, like, every once in a while this would pop across my screen, and it got to the point where I just couldn't ignore it anymore. And I had to start following this guy, and his name is King Randall, and he has this organization, and he started it, and I believe it's in Atlanta, and it's called the Solution to the X, in the X for Boys, and it is a network He's a 24-year-old native of Albany, Georgia, seeing a need to help enhance and advance the lives of the young men in his community. He set out to take action to combat the high poverty and crime rates in Southwest Georgia City. Now, he is an articulate, really well-spoken, very like upright young man, and he's a Christian. And what he does is he takes all of these kind of young boys from different walks of life, different schools, and they can be a part of this project where he walks around with a group of other dudes, kind of like similar guys. And they teach all of these young men the principles of being men. And it's really heartwarming. He's sitting there with a group of guys and he's talking to them. And he's on TikTok, he's on Instagram, he's on Facebook, and he has his own website as well. And he has this way with them where they listen to him, and he teaches them. And the kids are anywhere between, I think, like the ages of 7 or 8 all the way into their teens. And he will teach them restaurant etiquette. He will teach them how to pump gas and how to do it properly and what everything means. He'll take them to the grocery store and teach them how to properly budget. He'll teach them, how to, what do you do if, your wife puts on the list just milk? Which milk do you get? And they're like, I don't know. And he goes, well, that's when you call the wife and ask her. He brings in a family element of going, if you want to be a man, to build a family, to be a good father, to be a good husband, to support and provide. If you want to do all of these things, here's a class of skill sets and rules on how to do it.
I may not fit the age bracket that he's looking to help, but I should give him a call and reach out, because I thought the answer was chocolate milk in all situations, if left to your own devices.
Yeah.
Go on.
So a video of him at a gas station teaching them about the different types of octanes and what they're for. And the dangers of things, and also to keep awareness when you're pumping, and not to let your sister or your mother or your wife or your daughter pump the gas. You do that, and you get out and you keep an eye out. Make sure you're watching all around while that gas is pumping.
Do you know what the AKI is? What that means? That index rating on our octane ratings at the gas pump? You know what AKI means?
No.
It is the anti-knock index.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, detonation versus knocking. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, he also teaches them how to set up doctor's appointments. He'll take them into a doctor's office, and the people, he also teaches them how to get what the proper etiquette of getting pulled over by a police officer when they're getting a ticket, so they don't get in trouble or escalate it. And so
I should call this guy. A Jesus.
And they'll have a cop on duty there, and he'll go teach him with King here, and he will sit there and teach them, this is what you do. Why would you get in their faces? Have it ready. Have your hands here. Talk to them this way. And he has this captive audience of boys that react to him every time. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. And they absolutely respect him and love him. And you can see that he's got a good understanding of a value system, that he's really going to change these kids' lives. These kids are going to be different, and they are going to be assets to their communities no matter what. And you can tell that they're actively involved in it. They're not just looking around yeah, whatever, this guy, we're forced to be here. You can tell they all want to be a part of this. And he teaches them how to go, the lady at the doctor's office is a nurse who will play along with the script. And he goes, okay, now you need to ask him, your wife is ill and she has a fever. You need to approach them and use your communication to be able to do it. How do you communicate this with etiquette and manners and understand exactly how to do this properly? And he teaches them how to do that. And he teaches them if a waiter is in a bad mood and not treating you right, how to properly handle that without getting in the guy's face, because you don't know what's going on in his world. He could have had a very bad day. Mm-hmm. So let's figure that out. And so he teaches them how to properly ask for a manager without escalating. Would I be able to speak to a manager? And so he has the kids do it, and then the manager will come over and they'll explain what happened in a calm, collected, polite manner, and then they go, oh, she goes, okay, well, I'll go talk to him. And then the guy comes over, the waiter, pretending he's part of the act, comes over and he apologizes and says, I'm sorry, I had a bad day, wrecked my car on my way here, I took it out on you, I apologize. And then he goes, and then what do we do? And they go, that's okay. We just wanted to make sure you were okay. Can we pray with you?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, that would be great. And so he has the kids pray with this guy. And it is heartwarming to watch him affect so many lives. And it's every race of kid. You've got a lot of, it's Atlanta, there's a lot of black kids, but there's also Hispanic kids and white kids that are all a part of this group, that he gets to teach them how to cook. He's teaching them how to do different recipes and be useful and be able to do things in the world and in life. And it's just so positive to watch. And he's a runner. He's a track runner and a marathon runner. And so he's got kind of this discipline to him, and teaches them how to respect women, respect their mothers, respect their fathers, respect their how to treat a wife properly, how to treat girlfriends properly. He's and then also teaches them how to raise chickens and how to do. Now, obviously, in this day and age, you're always worried about some type of predatory kind of, what's been going on in Boy Scouts and stuff like that. Like, so there's always a risk factor to this, obviously, but this guy, if we could clone him 100 times and then send him out into the world, and we wouldn't have a problem with crime. We wouldn't have a problem with boys. Boys would be turning into proper young men and then proper citizens because of guys like this who actually take the time to do this and actually be a part of understanding the problem and creating a solution for it. And we don't have that even available here in a mentorship type of way in areas like North Idaho. Like this is a mentorship program that will have significant impact in his community. But if this grows any further than him, it would make unstoppable men. And
I agree. I hate caveating this. I like the idea of this just as a fabric mending of society. But I shit you not, King Randall, if you show up on the Epstein list or something and make us look like assholes, oh my God.
Right?
Yeah. You know what I mean? But like, generally speaking, I think this is super cool. Also, hit refresh if you guys are coming back in. I know my internet dropped for a second there. The recording on the pod will be fine, but the broadcast was interrupted. So sorry about that. It was like a 2-second drop and then we came back. So hopefully you're all still here. We had a few watching. Anyway, King Randall is our dope this week, and it's really cool.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. He's been a blast to kind of keep tabs on and watch the impact that he has on young men's lives, which is rare these days. There's, which we'll be getting into because of one of the movies that I will be reviewing is a documentary on the manosphere, which is the exact opposite of what this guy is doing. And this self-indulgent, egotistical, abusive insanity that the manosphere is. This is the opposite of that. And I think that a guy like this is a blessing to have. And I think that this is the answer, not the manosphere. But
Great
King
segue.
Randall, you can find him. Yeah, King Randall, you can find him on all sorts of social media platforms and his website. You just, if you Google him, it's the xforboys.org. And so highly recommend it. But yeah, so that's the dope for this week.
Nice.
So, movies. You said you watched something.
Oh God, mine's gonna be brief. I watched Sinners, and I hated it. It started off interesting, and then they like introduced a music element to it, and you covered all this already. But they introduced a music element to it that I saw what they were going for with like this multi-generational. There's always one that can conjure up the veil between life and death kind of thing with the trueness of their music, and
Right.
that was kind of a weak premise anyway. And then you get into the monster part of it, and then it turned into the most overt white people are bad, generally speaking, ending to a movie that didn't really make a lot of sense to begin with. And I think Michael B. Jordan just got an Oscar for this performance too, which the cast did well for what it was, but the premise of the movie was not engaging. And then it turned out to really be charged in a very socioeconomic, anti-white political type of agenda that was pretty obvious. And I was like, well, that was a waste. So anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
No Megs.
One of the things that
I don't care about that film. No Megs. Like,
Okay.
I don't give a shit.
One of the things that I did see recently is that it is getting actually saying that it ripped off From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, and they do kind of a breakdown of it, they're not wrong. It's just set in a different time frame. But yeah, like it's two crime brothers on the run and get locked up in a bar fighting vampires, and so it was basically the exact same storyline, just done way worse.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so well, I watched 3 things, and I'll try to get through them as quickly as possible. So, because I didn't care for any of them.
Yes. We've been up for 2 hours and 15 minutes, and we didn't really care about anything we watched this week.
Yeah. So, Nobody 2. I loved Nobody 1. The Bob Odenkirk, like, action, like coming out of nowhere Bob Odenkirk action film where he plays a like a hitman spy kind of situation, like and has to kind of protect his family from Russian mafia stuff.
I think I watched the first one with you when you were down here, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really awesome cinematography, awesome script, awesome fight scenes, awesome all around. They decided to make a Nobody 2, and I feel like what they did is somebody bought a Midwestern old, like kind of mini funhousey carnival theme park thing with a rundown water park attached to it, and they went, hey, what do we do with this as a studio? And they're like, well, we need to make more money off of that Nobody 2. Here's a basic premise, let's throw it through the AI writer and build a movie off of it. It was campy. It did not have the same kind of gravitas or grit that the first one had. It was all the same actors and characters, but they brought even back Christopher Lloyd and everything. But it was kind of a bumbling mess where they go on vacation to get away from his job, right? And they happen to fall into a town that is a front town for a trafficking organization, right? And he bumps into the wrong people and causes a fight, and then gets noticed, and they try to take him out. Like the bad guys try to take him out, and he of course takes all them out. And there's a corrupt sheriff played by Colin Hanks of all people, really miscast. But I've never seen a worse miscasting in my life than the villain of this movie, and it was Sharon Stone. And Sharon Stone was, I don't know what paid this woman to do this movie, because whoever wrote the dialogue for her was not for her. It was not for her. It was the worst role I've ever seen her in. It was
Yikes.
so hard to watch. It was cringy. You're like, oh, why? Don't talk anymore. Just don't talk anymore. Because she's like trying to be gangsta in like this really weird way, and it didn't make any sense. And she's like got like gold glasses on and slick back hair, and she's trying to be tough, and it was super weird. And the dialogue was terrible. The plot was terrible. Had a couple of fun fight scenes, but nothing memorable, nothing that like stuck out, like the bus scene from the first one.
Yeah.
Or like, you remember these scenes. This one didn't really have anything that I cared about. The family I cared less about. They kind of made the wife a brat. They kind of made the son, they tried to give them backstory, but nothing really happened. They had kind of like Scooby-Doo like level comedy stuff in it that didn't make any sense. And so I think it was a complete abysmal failure, and I wish they hadn't made this. 3 megs, that's it, just for because. But yeah, terrible. If you are a fan of the first Nobody, don't bother watching the second one.
Fair enough.
I was really looking forward to this one, which was the remake of Anaconda.
Yeah.
The classic John Voight, Jenny from the Block, Ice Cube, and who else is in that? One of the Luke Wilson, not Luke Wilson, Owen Wilson.
Oh, Owen Wilson, yeah.
Yeah, from the 90s, crew goes out into the Amazon, and John Voight has a terrible accent, and they all get murdered one by one by a mythical giant snake. So this one is kind of a meta version of that, where you've got Jack Black and Paul Rudd. And basically, I think what they needed to do is keep the rights to this movie, which was part of the meta of this, is that Paul Rudd is a struggling actor who was childhood best friends with Jack Black, who was a writer and director, but is now working for his dad's wedding video business and not following his dreams. Paul Rudd shows up for his birthday and presents to him and the other 2 people in their group, which is Steve Zahn and Tandy Newton.
Steve Zahn. Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
And Tandy Newton. And there's this weird kind of love thing between Rudd and Tandy Newton, and that never really kind of manifests until the very end. It's really weird.
There's a weird love thing between Tandy Newton and myself as well. She just doesn't know any of it, but
but Paul Rudd tells his group of friends that he met the mother of the writer of Anaconda, the original, and was bought the rights to it. So he wants to give them all a big hurrah and go out into the jungle and remake Anaconda and do a film together as friends.
So they actually fourth wall broke this in the script itself.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
All right.
And then from there, it's like a bad Jurassic Park movie meets like, I don't even know, like a Disneyland version of Anaconda with like none of it. Like they just kind of threw in. It looks like they had a premise. They're like, we need to put these 2 guys in a film. We need to keep the rights to this movie in a meta kind of way, because if we want to do anything with this Anaconda franchise, they even have in the movie a scene where they're on their riverboat and 2 other riverboats go by, and it's obviously a movie production crew. Turns out Paul Rudd doesn't have the rights because it's a Sony crew, and they're making a revision version of Anaconda.
So this is a documentary then? No, I'm just kidding.
But Ice Cube does a cameo, and the snake was cool. but then there's other characters that they came in and do a flip at the end that wasn't really a twist. It kind of was just lame. There was really no point to it. It was, I got probably 4 good laughs out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of a mix between a meta version of an AI written film that they got 4 good laughs out of, kind of a waste of time, and they kind of pointed out that that's what they're doing, is just kind of filling a gap in order, like, to make the IP stay with Sony. And so I don't know, like, Snake was cool. 4 or 5 decent jokes amongst probably 30 that weren't I don't know, 4 megs.
Yeah.
So yeah, nothing
Danny
to write home
usually
about.
is good for half a meg no matter what the movie is for me.
And,
but,
and that's why. That's why
I watched Mission
Four
Impossible too. Jeez. Come on.
But yeah, so you know, they've got weird dynamic with their friends. There's a scene where they thought Jack Black was dead, so they decided to lure, but he got regurgitated from the snake, and they found his body, and they had also had regurgitated like a boar, and so they taped the boar to the top of his head as a distraction so they could get around the snake and the snake would attack him. Well, he wakes up and is like, I'm not dead. Like, and then realizes that there's a boar like a dead boar taped to the top of him. And in classic Jack Black fashion, and starts running, right? And then it turns out that the boar is also not dead. So the boar wakes up taped to this guy, and like comedy ensues. But I don't know, just not.
It's sad to see Jack Black is just that guy now, because he like also did Jumanji as well, the remake of that, didn't he?
This had a Jumanji feel to it,
and it was just kind of like, oh, I don't know. That's unfortunate. 4 mega, huh?
Yeah, not good.
Damn.
And then the last one I watched was a documentary.
Okay.
And this one I was kind of interested in. Now, I am not a big fan of the documentarian Louis Theroux. And due to the fact that Louis Theroux is known for just kind of I mean, he went after like Scientology, stuff like that, but he's kind of a lefty, you know, and trying to pretend like he's in the middle moderate, but he always goes after kind of conservative stuff, you know. But he's a good documentarian. He actually likes or does a good job of being softly confrontational, where he can go into a really probably considerably aggressive situation and stand there kind of awkwardly like an awkward Brit and just say outlandish, you know, ask outlandish questions that need to be asked without fear of being like punched, which is what I found pretty amazing in this. But in this particular case, he decided to tackle what is known as the manosphere, or like, and it's like Louis Theroux Inside the Manosphere is the name of the movie. But for those that don't know, the manosphere is kind of like the red pill group, and not in a political sense, in the man
pro weightlifting Joe Rogan type of manosphere.
Yeah, and so, but he really focuses on like the influencers that are kind of like the Tate and Andrew Tate kind of level guys,
bro science
and
plus kind of guys.
Yeah, Sneeko and a lot of those guys like Justin Waller and Ed Matthews and Harrison Sullivan. You know, a lot of these guys, Myron Gaines, the kind of real high end guys that are all part of this like hyper masculine, you know, bitches should be slaves, and this kind of, none of them are worth your time. You should be able to bang every girl you want while you have a wife that understands this, and just make money. And
that makes sense.
This kind of like pendulum, like hyper pendulum swing from progressive feminism, and it is not the answer. It is the reaction, the hyper reaction on this end.
Right.
It's a bunch of sensitive men who got their feelers hurt and decided to make a personality about it and build off of that.
It's actually a great way to describe those dudes.
Yeah. And he kind of explores into them, and they think at first that he's going to kind of give them a fair shake, which in essence he does. He's just asking questions that the rest of it, like I would ask.
Right.
But they think that now it's because they have to answer these questions that he's shaking them down and going to try to make them look bad. They did it to themselves.
Right.
Like the answers that they give, also he explores the aspect that all of these guys have now jumped the manosphere train, have gotten into the political arenas, and are now hyper anti-Jewish. And all of them are, which is super weird because now they're all hanging out with Nick Fuentes and, that whole ilk of humans. And so you see them often together in groups. And he kind of really just does a raw take on it. He doesn't really give too much of his opinion on it other than while he's talking to him, he goes, "Don't you think that's kind of weird?" And they're like, "No, bro, no, it's not weird at all. Like, you're weird, fag," and he just kind of sits there and looks at him and goes, "Okay." It was fascinating to see. I didn't learn anything from it. This is all stuff that I've known through my other studies into kind of the Groyper stuff, because these guys their Venn diagrams kind of cross over quite a bit. And so I'm aware of a lot of these guys. But I didn't really learn anything other than they're exactly who I thought they were, and I don't like them still.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the documentary goes, when I tried to kind of take a 30,000 foot view of it, it turned out it was just an idiot interviewing idiots. So if you're interested in or don't know, it was basically like the boomer's guide to what is going on the internet with these boys. And
sounds riveting.
Yeah. So if you don't know who any of these guys are and have possibly some connection to it in a concerning element, like you have a 17 or 18-year-old sweet grandkid or sweet son who all of a sudden is like talking and acting in ways that you don't get, it's probably because of these guys. And this might give you a glimpse into what is actually going on in their worlds, because they are extremely influential on young men, and they shouldn't be. This is where, guys like King Randall that we were talking about earlier should be the mentors for these kids, not these asshats. These guys are idiots. And so I don't know. It was interesting to see it as confirmation more than anything else for me, and also as an understanding that it could be used as a tool for other people, but for me not so much. But I don't know. I didn't fall asleep, so I don't know. I'd say probably 6.5 megs.
Okay.
Tail end.
That's generous. So,
yeah. So, but yeah. Hopefully I get to watch better stuff this week.
Yeah, no doubt, huh?
Yeah. There's a movie called Primate that I'm looking at right now.
Okay.
So definitely not in your arena. It's a probably gory horror kind of situation.
Yeah.
But
I'll probably skip all that. Well, the good news is that brings us to our Overlord tip of the week. So if you've been waiting this whole time, thanks a bunch. Here it is. Overlord tip number 23. We're chugging along. What do you got for us?
Okay. So oftentimes, there comes a time when you realize that you have essentially overpowered your opposition.
Yeah.
But you tend to lean on certain technologies that, if compromised, might put you in a situation that would put you at a disadvantage for even the most basic of situations. You need to be prepared for those.
True.
So I will keep a special cache of low-tech weapons, not high-tech weapons, not lasers. Some low-tech weapons, enough to do damage, but stuff that don't take a lot of computers or components. And train my troops in their use. That way, even if the heroes manage to neutralize my power generator or render the standard issue energy weapon useless, my troops will not be overrun by a handful of savages who are armed with spears and rocks. Like, there's nothing more embarrassing than being so much more technologically advanced and getting the Ewoks to fuck you up.
Yeah.
Like, that's
excellent.
This is
analogy.
The scenario we're talking about. Yeah. So absolutely not. We are going to make sure that we have a secondary rung of military power.
Yeah.
So that way we can actually draw from that if the batteries go dead. Nothing is worse than when you're like pew 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 and it goes pew.
Yeah.
And the Energizer Bunny is nowhere to be found, and now you've got Ooga Booga and Og hitting you with a club.
This is an excellent argument for backup iron sights on today's firearm as well, just in case the battery dies.
Correct.
So
exactly correct. So, but that is the Overlord tip number 23.
Oh, I love it.
And take it to heart, because if you're ever in that situation, don't get caught with your pants around your ankles.
It's true.
Yeah.
Wise words to live by. Anything to plug this week? Anything you got coming up?
Nothing for me in particular, but just want to plug my wife's website again, which is kcspectator.com.
Yep.
And she could use all the help that she can get with her run. But outside of that, nope, nothing on my docket. I've got pretty heavy work week, and yeah, that's about it.
Well, I'm Angel, and I approve of this message. Go check her out, kcspectator.com. She also puts out a hell of a newsletter, so
absolutely sign up for her newsletter, guys.
Wait. All right. Well, we will see y'all very, very soon. Have a good night.